fashion show out. All right.
Yeah. The only part I want to try to find us there we go. Let's share out. Get the people going.
Curious to see how it'll go on YouTube.
I know, right?
I love new stuff.
Sending it to everybody.
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 Okay. That's good. I'll share it now. We got one viewer.
Hey. Yay!
I don't know who you are, but hey.
We're happy you're here.
Say hi. Share.
Did you put it on? Did you send it to me?
Oh, I think so. I don't know.
All right. I'll check online.
Oh, there, we have I sent it to you.
Yay.
Oh,
there it is. Here it is.
Oh, Ace is watching. Say hi. Don't be shy.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. We don't know who's watching yet, but there's 5 of you. So please say hi. Share out. Share. Get us out there. We're actually streaming on YouTube now because we have our YouTube channel or page, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what they call it anymore. But that is up and running now too. So we're streaming from there. So please head over there, and I believe Beth is going to put that up on the screen so you can see it.
Yes.
And you can subscribe and share to everybody. Yay. But while she's doing that,
we go.
Hi, Jeremy.
And I'm going to...
So, again, it's called Twisted Tales from the Graveyard. You can just Google search it, and you'll see our lovely faces pop up. Our beautiful faces.
How lovely we are. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing that.
Yep.
And can I put it in chat?
You might be able to.
I don't think I can, but that's okay because we'll put it as a comment on our other locations.
Yep.
That this is. So it will get shared, but we are on YouTube now. So that's exciting.
Why is that popping up? Live viewer comments. We know that. What is going on with StreamYard? All right, so tonight we are, thank you, Jeremy, for subscribing to our
Hello, channel. Ace, Jeremy. Hello.
And everybody else watching?
Absolutely.
I wonder if they do watch from the, it should pop up, the comments. Jeremy, you would know this answer. You can answer my question. If we're streaming from YouTube, if somebody's watching just from YouTube alone, and they chat, will it pop up as well? I think so. I'm pretty sure.
Because I think technology and fine tuning. Technology is great when it works. And it works great. This is great.
It also works when it's user friendly.
Yes.
I'm technically challenged, I think, sometimes. I'm smart with some things, and then my coworker, she'll always ask me, well, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not that intelligent when it comes to computers.
Okay, awesome. Love it.
Very good. Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Awesome. So tonight, topic that we're going to talk about is a fairy tale. You're probably all aware of it or heard it in the past, but Hansel and Gretel. It's an old Hansel and Gretel. I don't have the German sound. Can't do it. Sorry.
No. It's the Looney Tunes I have to show you this.
Thanks, David. Oh, look, David's watching. Hi, Darren. Hey, girlies.
Let me see.
With the cool shades. But yes, we're going to talk about Hansel and Gretel, the fairy tale, and its dark, dark side to it. There you go. She's going to play that. Oh, I remember that.
You remember this?
I do remember it now.
And the witch is all Hansel. It's only like a minute long. It's not very long. She's got a recipe book up. Anyway, Bugs Bunny shows up.
I am the truant officer, madam. And pray, what are your names, my poor children?
Watch this.
My name is Gretel, and my name is Hansel.
Run,
Hansel.
She is a witch.
I thought he was gonna do it. No, he didn't do it. But it's
he
hilarious.
did. He said Hansel. He did say it.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, I remember that
actually,
from being a kid,
I do remember that. Now that you played it,
I had to. It's all I've been saying all week.
And our reminiscing of our childhood. Yes. So basically, how the story goes is two children are basically lost in the forest, and they come upon this candy house. Which kind of a little picture depicts it. And what they do is they find out that it belongs to a witch. Okay. How the story goes, though, is that the parents, and this, what the findings that I came across is that the Brothers Grimm, which you probably all heard about because there was a TV show called, what was it? Once Upon a Time or whatever called. I think it did a lot of their fairy tales.
Yes.
But the Brothers Grimm was from Germany, and they were in the late or early 1800s, and they wanted to keep alive the folklore that they've heard when they were children. So they started writing stories about the folklore. So the folklore was a little different when they heard it. So they were trying to bring it to light. And so they made all these little fairy tales about the folklore that they had. So yeah, it was their first collection was published in 1812. Yep. And they were brothers.
I even found folklore going back to the late Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Like 1250 to 1500.
Yes. And that's I came across something like that too, where they said they might have not been the original creators of some of the fairy tales that they did write about, that there was other publications back in like the 1600s that depicted about Hansel and Gretel a little bit. So, but who really knows anymore? Like who's telling the truth and who's not, unless we're time travelers and we can go back to that time frame and, which I know I'm not. I wish I was, because I could change a lot of things in my life, but hey, we're not there.
So, I kind of felt like while I was doing the research for this and looking stuff up, that I felt like the story in general, I mean, you really don't have to go down a dark rabbit hole. I feel like the story in general is just kind of a dark.
It is.
It's a dark and spooky and scary. I mean, it's really a lot of different emotions, because if you think about it, I mean, you were starting the story of, or the plot basically of what it was. And, you know, they started these out by the mother. It was, you know, a lot of these folklores and things that were written way, way back. The mother was a lot of the, I don't want to say villain, but the mother was, you know, not the greatest. Well, it wasn't until later on that they decided to add stepmother because they didn't want it to be affiliated that your, you know, mothers are bad. And I mean,
right.
not that, you know, stepmothers is any better.
Well, but and you look at it because they changed it after a while to stepmother because, and I was reading when I was doing my research is that a lot of stories, even nowadays, stepmothers are the evil being. And I was like, oh, that's sad to me. Like, not all stepmoms are evil. Like, come on.
No, but I mean, look at Cinderella. I mean, it's the same concept.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of other fairy tales where you have that same kind of concept.
And the Brothers Grimm are the ones that wrote about Cinderella. So they must have stuck with the stepmothers. But hey, but yeah, it's the story itself. And a lot of the stories that the Brothers Grimm did write about, the fairy tales, they all have a moral being to the story. Like there's a moral part of it, which I kind of found. Yep. It's like, okay, you know, like what's like nowadays there's a moral to the story, and it's like, but back then it was not that way. It was supposed to be a dark and twisted tale because it, like they said, they were keeping the folklore alive. And
I don't know. I mean, just how horrible. I mean, just think about it. How horrible would it be being as young as these two kids are, that you're just taken, you know, in the middle of the night and taken through woods and dropped off. I mean, nowadays, if you think about it in nowadays terms versus when it was written, I mean, that would be unheard of. I mean, the neglect alone and basically sacrificing your children so you can survive, you know.
Well, and that's what the whole story was about, was child famine, because it was during the famine time.
Some mothers are toxic. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but it was about the times of famine, and it was during and I'm going to say this wrong, Napoleonic Wars. So it's when Napoleon was around. So that's where their folklore started, and it was during that time frame that there was feast or famine, and a lot of people couldn't afford food. Kind of like it's going to start, and you know, nowadays where the food prices are going up and people are getting more hungry, but we're not to the starvation period just yet. But it was during the famine, and then there's child abandonment, like you said, and cannibalism.
Yes.
And that's the gruesome part. Oh, yes. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that's my background. I didn't want to just have a plain old white wall behind me, which is my kitchen, because I am at my kitchen table. So I bought this at I think one of the conventions I go to. I forget. Ace would know. I think it was the Curiosity in that show. But yeah, the cannibalism is getting, like, that part. When I was reading about that, I was like, there's no way. Like, and so as the story goes, is the mother, the original story before he turned it into a stepmom, the mom made the father take the kids out to the forest, leave them there. But at that time, Hansel, or however you want to say his name, Hansel, left pebbles on the ground to find their way back. So he was smart. But they put the kids there because they didn't want to have extra mouths to feed. So they wanted to feed themselves and not their children, and they didn't want to watch them die. So they're like, go die in the woods. That's morbid.
It really is.
It's like, to me, that's it is a very Hannibal origins feel, Jill. But yeah, but they didn't want to starve themselves, so they're like, go out and die in the woods so we don't see you die. And just that, to me as a mom myself, I could never do that. I would feed my kids before I fed myself. Like, I'd make sure they had food over me. Like, I mean, I'm a chunky girl, so I'm gonna last a little longer. But you know, my kids are gonna eat.
Yeah, no, you're not. You're fine.
I'm a chunky. I'm gonna last a lot longer than a little 100-pound girl. That's all I gotta say. I'm harder to kidnap too. Anywho, but yeah, so that's where the child abandonment, and a lot of families back in that time era was doing that. They were leaving their kids behind, and in hopes that maybe somebody with a little bit of money would find their kids and care for them. But most children did pass away from starvation. But then there was the attempts of cannibalism, where people got so hungry that they started eating their children, especially the mothers. And I was like, that's gross too. Like, what the heck?
So there is another variant to this. Folklorist Iona and Peter Opie indicate that Hansel and Gretel belong to a group of European tales, especially popular in Baltic regions, about children that were outwitting ogres, into whose hands they had involuntarily fallen under. So their tale talks about ogres.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
In the Baltic regions. So if they came upon the ogre,
what was an ogre back in that day? Was it like Shrek?
I don't know. Let's find out.
What was an ogre like back then? Was it just a really bad, grumpy old person like the witch?
European.
Oh, the witch Salem trial started yesterday.
Ooh, we should have done that one today too.
I know. I thought about that. I was like, oh man, if I only would have realized it, but it was too late. We already had this on the board.
Well, we could always do it later.
But yeah, I mean, obviously witches were around for a very long time, but I never knew ogres were real.
Yeah, neither. Well, I mean,
hi, Eddie Pence.
Witches in the sense that they have it in this story aren't necessarily real either. So
right, and how the story continues. Yeah, it was in I was wrong about the time frame. It's 1314 to 1322, so it's even earlier than I thought. But yeah, it was the Great Famine of the 1300s. And then there was enslavement too, because they would make the children into slaves. But it didn't say exactly how they were enslaved. But that's part of the story too, is that the witch wanted to fatten up Hansel to eat him, so she wasn't starving, and so she would make Gretel do everything for her and get him all plump and fat, and she was going to cook him in their oven. Okay, Jill said I was also thinking back in the pauper days where medieval, even parents would sell the kids to be apprenticed, live and raised by new owners just to survive. That is very true. And that was, like, if you think about that, like in some of your Cinderella days, that was more like Cinderella, where they would do that. but there's a lot of enslavement. If you look at a lot of these fairy tales, which we'll probably end up talking about some of the other ones, because that's our whole shenanigans right here.
Well, Ace, I'm sure that if you just grab one of your dolls, you'll be fine.
Oh, good God.
Just snuggle with one of your dolls. You'll be fine. But yeah, so I was looking up the whole ogre thing, and I think that that's just their way of saying witch, because when I get on there and I look at the pictures of it, it's just basically witches. So it must just be another term for a witch.
Maybe it's a male version of a witch, an ogre, an old man witch. I don't know.
I mean, if you think about it, though, in the tale with Hansel or whatever's, if plumping him up would not be that easy. I mean, it's not going to be something that just kind of happens overnight. Even if you're picking stuff off the house and eating it, because isn't that part of the storyline too?
Yeah,
because they were eating off the house.
Yeah. So basically, how it goes is, so he found his way back home because he laid out the pebbles, and then they, the first night they ended up back home, and the stepmom was furious, so she made the dad take him back out there the next night, and this time he ended up leaving breadcrumbs. Well, the breadcrumbs got eaten by the birds and the animals, and so they couldn't find their way back home, and so they started wandering around, and they came across this house that was decorated in cookies and candies and creams and, all the fun-loving, adventurous stuff, the good stuff.
I mean, anybody would have eaten it. Anybody.
I mean, yeah. So you can see, here's a picture of them, one that I found. But it was a delicious house. And so that's when they were so hungry they started eating the house. Well, that's when the witch came and found them eating. So for payback, she was going to eat, Hansel on, basically because he destroyed her house.
Now, one of the stories or versions that I was reading was talking about how they were also plumping up Gretel. Now they kept Hansel in a cage.
Yep.
While this was happening. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, getting unlimited food, I'm sure he was happy with that. But being caged like an animal, and I don't know. Now, in the versions I know of as a kid, Gretel was kind of like a slave. Yeah. And she just did all of the housework, kind of like another Cinderella situation.
Yep. Yeah, he's not afraid of dolls. He's not afraid of ghosts either. Don't let him fool you. He says he is. He's the ghost whisperer. Okay, maybe he's a little afraid, but I can't say for sure who's afraid and who's not afraid, but he's a ghost whisperer. Don't let him fool you. That's Mama Bear, Miss Nancy. That's what she's called, Mama Bear. She's an awesome lady. Have you ever met Nancy?
I don't know. Maybe.
You have to meet her. She's awesome. Cutest little thing. She's cute. But anyways, back to Hansel and Gretel. So, yes, Hansel was engaged. What?
Do you remember how they tricked her?
Yes, I was getting to that.
Oh, sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. So basically he was in a cage getting fattened up, and the witch, one of the stories that I read, one of the pages, there's a lot, I make so many prints, it's not even funny. I probably use a whole ream of paper at work.
I know, I have all my notes.
Don't tell my boss. Don't tell my boss. But anyways, so basically she would check on him every day. She was feeding him, starving Gretel, making her do all the housework and, cleaning and all that to pay back for what they ate. and she was trying to fatten up Hansel, and he had a animal bone in the cage. So, like, let's say a chicken bone, and she would say, "Stick out your finger." Well, she was a little old witch, couldn't see, so she would feel his finger and see that it was like really thin. So she'd give him more food. Well, that made her starve a little bit more, and then Gretel starved because she wasn't feeding her. So, and he would do this every day, hand her the bone. Well, then he's like, well, that's not working, so I'm just going to eat him anyways. And so she wanted Gretel to put him in the oven, but Gretel acted like she didn't know what she was doing. Didn't like, she looked at her, so she made the witch show her how to put him in. Well, then as she ducked her head into into the oven, Gretel pushed her in the oven and locked the oven door, and that's how they killed the witch. So they committed murder. So we have
you got all kinds of stuff in this story.
We got, and this is supposed to be a children's fairy tale.
Yes.
Like, this is growing up as a preschool teacher, mother. I read all these stories to my kids, to my classroom. And when I learned like what the true meanings were these, I was like, oh, what are we teaching our kids? Like, yeah.
And they're worried about stuff they watch on TV when they're introduced to this kind of stuff on a regular basis. Not that it's bad. I mean, you and I grew up on it and we're still living, and, but it's just, it's got everything in it, like every genre, all the content.
Right. And Jill said she doesn't like that they depict to eat the kids for magic spells to stay young as a witch. And they do that in some of the different stories that, as we've read in growing up and seen the, cartoons and all that stuff. They do, which is terrifying in itself because that doesn't really happen. At least I don't think, because if it does, someone please tell me, because we need to find some magic potion here.
Well, I mean, you definitely, even if you go more modern, you still have, you're always going to have the witches that practice good, and you have the witches that practice bad. I mean, it's not any different than anything else that we deal with in our, regular society, unfortunately. But
right,
being this far back, and really there's not any there. I mean, I guess a lot of your fairy tales have witches. They're just called other things, like fairies, but fairies have magic, and there's certain fairies that have fallen that are using their magic against, so.
But that's like anything, though. That's like your angels. You have your fallen angels that do bad, and you have your good angels. You have, I think, since the beginning of time, whenever that was, you're going to have good and bad. You're yin and your yang, It's just we need the good to outweigh the bad, Jill says, I prefer the idea from the movie Hansel and Gretel where their mother or parents are burned, killed for witchcraft, but was actually a good witch, so they are both witches but good. Are you talking about the live version one? And I forget what's her name, the one from Hunger Games. I think Kristen Stewart, wasn't it? One of those. I think it was Kristen Stewart, not Hunger Games. Twilight. Wasn't it Kristen Stewart that was in that movie?
Was it the hunter, like the witch hunter, Hansel and Gretel, the witch hunter or something?
Yeah, I think that's the movie she's talking about. I've seen bits and parts of it.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
Is that the movie, Jill? If that's the movie you're talking about? I've seen bits and parts of it. I do like, and it's funny too, because I was earlier when I was reading all this and going through it again, because my brain's short. It's not going to remember everything I read last week. So I was reviewing it all. I end up starting to think about, that magical kingdom in Florida. I'm not going to mention the names because I don't want to have copyright But you all know what I'm talking about, the one with the big castles, all the magic that surrounds it. I gotta look now. Now you got me thinking because I don't know which movie you're talking about.
I know which one. I just don't remember what it's called.
Oh yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. I knew he was in it. I thought it was Kristen Stewart that was with him. I do remember that one. Yeah, that's the one I saw bits and parts of. What's it called? Anyways, it's Hansel and Gretel. It was in 2013. It says Witch Hunters.
Yeah.
It's not Kristen Stewart.
I didn't know he was in it.
No, it's Gemma Arrington or Arturington or something. I don't know. It's not who I thought the female was, but I knew I had him in my head. I just didn't know his name. Good call. So yeah, we were on the same movie. I see bits and parts of it, but not the whole thing. But anyways, I was thinking of that magical place that everybody knows and loves. Well, most people. But you think about the stories that they have, because I'm an avid collector of all those animated movies. I have, I think, 121 of them. And they're all the fairy tales that, Hansel, Gretel, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood,
They used to come in box sets, like all the little fairy. But see, here's the thing: in those, it's everybody lives happily ever after, and but in the real fairy tale world of originals, it's not really like that. I mean, we'll have to cover some of the other ones too.
Oh, we are going to. We're going to talk about a lot of them.
Like a compare,
right,
to some of this, because I have a feeling we're going to find a lot more of all of these categories in some of even the darker versions of the fairy tales even. So I have a feeling we're going to end up down a huge rabbit hole.
Oh, I'm sure.
Probably a lot of conspiracy theories.
I love conspiracy theories.
Same.
They make you think, though, sometimes.
They really do. Because, I mean, a lot of them, it's possible. I mean, even though it's very far-fetched when you think about conspiracy theories and stuff, it's still possible, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I could have, thinking about all this as a mom, I just couldn't, I definitely would never abandon my children. There's no way. Shh. Sorry. The extra child came over. My extra. Sorry, everybody. I didn't know he was coming over. Ken said that was a good movie. They had some cool weapons. Yeah, I'll have to watch it now. Jill said, I have seen all versions of Hansel Gretel, so I know all these you're talking about. See, you should have just been on the show with us, Jill. Don't get me started. Hey. Hi, Valerie.
Hello.
But yeah,
right, so I am reading another version.
Okay, you do that.
So it says that the witch grows impatient and so she's preparing the oven for Hansel, but decides she is hungry enough to eat Gretel too. So Gretel was to open the door, and they did all that. But then it said that they found a vase full of treasure, including precious stones. They put the jewels into their clothing, and the children set off for home. A white duck, a swan in some version, ferries them across an expanse of water, and at home they find only their father. His wife had died of unknown causes.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah.
There's definitely different periods. Yes,
I didn't
I
know
did.
that they
I
found
saw that.
treasure.
I didn't know that either. Growing up, I don't remember that in any of the fairy tales.
No.
But that was, yeah. There's definitely a lot of different known. Um,
Does anybody out there remember Shelley Long and Fairy Tale Theater?
mhm.
Do you remember those?
I do remember. I like
Oh
Shelley
my
Long though.
gosh, I freaking loved those.
You're
And
making me feel old here, Beth.
I know, I'm
Oh.
sorry, I'm aging us. I'm aging us. I mean, what I mean is I don't personally remember those, but does anybody else? No, I'm just kidding. No,
Yeah,
I definitely remember them, and I loved all of them. And she has a Hansel and Gretel version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nancy. Yeah, definitely. They were as the stories go. Throughout the generations, they did become more tamer for children, and that's where the morals came in. Um, the moral to Hansel and Gretel is supposed to be don't talk to strangers. So that's what we're supposed to be teaching our children through this story itself is when you come upon somebody you don't know, don't talk to them, don't follow them, don't, so that's the moral of the story. And they did, bring that to light that that's what nowadays, but as somebody that used to teach little children all this, I think there's a better way of teaching them not to talk to strangers. But it's also a double-edged sword when you do that, because how many times have we gone to the grocery store and started talking to the lady in front of us because we're standing in line for so long, and they have a young child and they're like, "Oh, he's so cute. How old is he?" Our kids see that, so
Yes.
and don't take candy from strangers, but it's a double-edged sword, and those were always my aha moments when I was teaching. I had a lot of people say different teachers teach us, and so you have to think differently with children, and you got to go with the way the days are now. It's like it's a different world.
For this story, though, I find that, I mean, I realize they made morals into them later, but I mean, even when because they still had to have the plot to go with this moral. So,
Right.
And even in the plotted with the moral of don't talk to strangers or don't take candy from strangers, they're still being abandoned by their parents in the middle of the woods. I mean, what are they supposed to do? You know what I mean?
But if you think about it too, is it was the stepmother. So now you got children who have stepmommies and they know it. And it's like, what are you trying to say about the stepmom? Are they? I mean, you'd hope that they don't think of that, but there's some children that are really super smart at 4 years old and
Well,
been
you're
like,
right.
oh, So
Yeah.
it's like you got to think too. It's like, are those different ways of looking at it? Doing any harm to our children. I mean, some people argue and go, it's just a story.
Right.
But I literally stopped teaching all these nursery rhymes when I found out that they had really gruesome dark sides to them. I was like, I can't do it. Morally, I can't.
And especially with this day and age where you can just Google anything. I mean, you have the whole world at your fingertips. So, I mean,
and the 4-year-olds are on the computer and the phone.
Oh, absolutely.
And stuff. And I'm like, oh.
You hand a 4 or 5-year-old your iPhone or your tablet, they're going to have it organized for you in folders and everything before you can even blink. So, I mean, 4 and 5 may be a little extreme on that, but I mean, definitely 7 and 8-year-olds are doing,
Yeah,
I mean, they're giving our kids tablets in school.
Yeah.
Of course, now they're very filtered when they're using them. I know I teach in the schools. I work for a library, but I teach coding classes in the schools, and they have to bring their laptops. And a lot of times the teachers have to let us into certain sites because they are very filtered. But I don't know. A lot of kids just have straight access, though. Parents
they
aren't
do.
really monitoring them as they probably should, or using parental controls like they can. And, so, I mean, it's very scary. It's
It
very
is.
scary.
Yeah, and I think back to these times when, I mean, you still hear about parents murdering their kids even to
Oh,
this day,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it's just like it's always been around. Starvation has always been around. I mean, look how many homeless people we have, and people that are hungry, and kids that go to school hungry. It's still around to this day. So famine is not a lost cause. It's still there. People abandoning their children. I mean, you got the parents. You got parents who could be addicted to drugs and stuff, and to me, that's abandonment when you don't take care of your children. That's neglect. So it's never gone away. It's been around for generations and generations and generations.
Well, and Nancy, they're not just rewriting children's stories. I mean, they are rewriting history in general. I mean, the removal of history is the rewriting of history. And, although they, people don't want certain things said and certain things done, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of this political nonsense, but, it's still there. And, it's very sad that we can't respect history a little bit more.
Exactly.
It came from somewhere, and I feel like, who are we to fix it? It's not broken.
But it's like,
It was before us. It was before.
Enslavement has been around for eons and eons and eons. It didn't start in,
It still is.
It is. And, I mean, look at this story, the enslavement of Gretel. She had to do what the witch told her just to stay alive.
Well, you had two kinds of enslavement going on. You had the actual slave that was, treated horribly and made to do all the chores and the preparation. And then you had one that was actually caged,
right.
So, I mean, it's awful. And we still have that type of thing going on right now.
You do, because you have people who get, hijacked, kidnapped, whatever you want to call it. I mean,
we have an organization that's geared toward nothing but missing children. Mm-hmm. That's how awful it is, for our nation.
And you're right, Jill. Kids are getting lured through the web, internet, your PCs, your phones, your tablets, the gaming systems. I mean, it's such a hard world for our children, but then there's so much disrespect with the children too, because both parents have to work, just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. So it's like, who's watching the kids, Mm-hmm. And then you're tired when you get home from work, so it's easy to say, hey, go on your gaming system if you have one. I always tell my son, I'm like, who are you talking to? Because I can hear when he's on his VR, and I'm like, are you sure it's a kid? He's like, yeah, Mom. I'm like, are you sure though? Because there's adults that sound like kids. I'm like, and I constantly, even though he is 14 years old, he'll be 15 in December. Don't give out information. Don't tell him you're home alone. Don't do any of that. Don't give out personal information.
And, I actually teach internet safety as part of my job too. And I teach it to adults. I teach it to kids because I do work with the older population as well. And, it sometimes isn't things we say or words that we put out there. It's pictures that we post. I mean, you could just as easily post a picture of your school mascot. Mm-hmm. And just by having that picture, they're able to find out your location.
Right.
I mean, it's things like that we don't, and I'm not trying to scare people or anything like that. No. it's just the reality of it. And as safe as we want to keep our kids, and we all want to believe that our children are doing the right things, it still sometimes isn't that way. So it's just important to make sure that we're involved, whether they want us. And a lot of kids are very resilient and resistant to that. Mm-hmm. They don't want their parents around. They don't want their parent. If your kids are
like your teenage years, like I'm in right now. Like I want to be that helicopter mom, but it can't be that helicopter mom. I got to give them more freedom a little bit. And I was like, where are you? What are you doing? Like, she's like, I'm home. I'm fine. I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, she's like, stop worrying so much. I'm like, but I can't.
Yes, Jill. Yes, protect the kids. I watch way too much crime stuff. And so I've always been that parent. I'm who, what, where, when, why, and how. I mean, my kids know, even as adults, my kids know I'm not going to even call my mom and ask her anything until I know all of the questions she's going to ask. Where are you going? Who are you going to be with? What time are you coming home? How are you getting there?
Right.
Why? What's the purpose? So, I mean, I was one of those parents that was always in my kids' business. I need phone numbers. I will drop
I'm the same way. Like, I got to meet the parent if you're going over there. Got to say hi. Like, give me their phone number, address. And even when they have friends over, I talk to the parents. I'm like, kid, have any allergies? Do I need to know anything? Any medical? Yeah. Like, I'm going deep with this because I don't want anything to happen to your child when they're in my care, and I don't want anything to happen to my child when they're in your care. So I'm going to ask the tough questions. Like, I mean, my son's 20 years old. He's about to turn 20 in May. He's overseas on a mission, can't talk about it. I don't know where. I don't know anything because he can't talk about it. I'm like, damn it, if I didn't have two other kids, I'd be in the army with him. I'd be his battle buddy. Can't be that, but hey,
I mean,
I seriously try.
Right. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I mean, a bad parent, good parent, anything can happen to children regardless of what kind of a parent you are. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there more of a chance because you're not watching? Yeah, of course. But then you could be that most overprotective parent, and then your kids are just going to, I hate to say it, but they're going to lie to you, and they're going to tell you they're doing things that they're not really doing because they want to do them. And
they'll be that child when they turn 18. They're like, I'm free. You can't. I'm an adult now. Bye. And then I don't know. So I don't think I'll ever stop worrying about my kids. So when I was reading all this background about Hannah, I'm like, oh my God, I can't. I could never.
my oldest child will be 31 tomorrow. And I have that same concept. I'm just like, I couldn't even imagine. I would give up my last crumb for my child. I have. I mean, there was a time where we had no money and my kid's like, I need $1 and I've got $3 in my account, and there you go.
Right.
Back in my single mom days, and I don't know. I would give the shirt off my back. So I'm just a different kind of parent. There's no way I could lure my children somewhere in hopes that somebody else could take care of them. This was just a really sad story all the way around. And
it is. And even the part where they talked about like eating your kids, there's no way. Like,
yeah, that's weird.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't even imagine I couldn't even imagine eating anybody at that point. Not just my children, but any other human being. Like, I couldn't, I mean, someone might go, it tastes like chicken, but hey, no, I can't. No, it's bad enough we eat animals. I just, I couldn't.
Yes, Jill. It's definitely better to teach them to be smart. I mean, as a parent, that's really all you can do, or a guardian. I mean, even if you just are a guardian and you're not the actual parent, all you can do is instill the right values and hope that they're getting something out of that little grain of that they're probably listening to, because kids, I mean, we were kids once, and your parents saying things to you, sometimes you're just like, yeah, whatever,
Right.
but at least you're saying it and it's not unsaid and it has been heard. And
Yeah,
I don't know, I just feel like if they're going to teach this kind of stuff or encourage this stuff in some educational environments, then maybe they should, I don't know. I feel like there should be a warning label, like a warning label or something. Caution, read at your own risk. This might traumatize your children.
I just feel like, because even in the more innocent versions of Hansel and Gretel, the witch still tries to eat them in the story. Like, she wants to cook them and eat them. And that's the whole point of them going to the house. And I feel like there could just be a better storyline to it. Like, still get the point across, don't talk to strangers, but not be so gruesome of wanting to eat the children. Like, I don't know.
Isn't there also a little bit on that of them, from them eating off of her house? Doesn't she consider that stealing?
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, you could even get biblical about it, and as far as your commandments go, and I mean, if you wanted to go down another rabbit hole of it, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, but that's what happens when you're hungry. You steal.
Well,
you
that's
try
true.
To,
I mean, you're gonna do what you have to.
You're gonna do what you have to do to survive, and whatever it may be. I mean, you have people who dumpster dive to get food. I mean, that's kind of gross, but you're gonna do what you have to do to survive.
Well, something else that's a little gross, and I hate to admit it, but I have bearded dragons. I don't know if everybody knows that, but I have 3 bearded dragons and a chameleon. And
you have a chameleon?
I do. I have a veiled chameleon. He's 2.5 years old. He hates us. He hates everybody. He hates himself. If you've never had a chameleon, they are not friendly. Okay. But anyway, so they get expensive to feed. I mean, they just do. So I started breeding their food. So I breed bugs. So my husband will make funny comments from time to time, and he's like, well, at least if something happens and the apocalypse happens, we've got plenty of grubs that we can eat. I mean, and as gross as that sounds, I'm telling you,
true.
It's going to look really good if I haven't eaten in a week or so.
Yeah. I mean, there was the show Naked and Afraid, and they had to eat all these bugs. I'm just lucky I'm dating somebody who knows how to hunt and fish, and he knows the survival skills out in the woods. I'm a lucky girl.
We all have our things, I guess, but I'm going to be surviving one way or another.
I used to watch Naked and Afraid, and I saw the bugs and the shit that, I mean, you can eat certain bark if
Oh yeah, certain
I'm
berries,
like, okay. I keep saying I keep telling my kids, I'm like, I'm gonna get one of those pocket-sized survival guides that have all the different plants in it, because when the zombie apocalypse comes, I need to know which plants I can eat and won't die because I eat them. Because I won't eat the wrong.
If Hansel and Gretel would have had one of those survival guides, they would have never been eaten off of the witch's
I know
house.
they could have ate the trees and the berries
and there wouldn't have been a story.
And the bugs. I mean, bugs but there's a lot of bugs that are high in protein. It's gross. I couldn't do it, but I can't even eat fish. So, if I can't eat fish, well, I'll have to learn how to eat fish then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so gross. Like, just thinking about eating fish makes my brain just hurt.
Sorry.
I'm very textured. Like you just said, snails and grubs, and I can't do the things that taste that are like rubber. Nope. I don't know if I told you this. I was waiting for a team, and it was sitting on a couch, and it was cold all around my legs. Oh, okay.
So I have an issue with crickets, Ace. Not gonna lie. Like when we first got one of our
Ew.
bearded dragons, I was about the crickets, and they escape and they chirp, and you find them in weird places, and it's just weird. So I stopped using crickets altogether, and then I just started breeding food. So yeah, I don't like crickets. They're noisy, they smell, they escape. You find them in weird areas.
I just wanted to know, did you really eat a flowered cricket? Like, since you know that they're that good? Like, are you just pulling my leg, or are you actually? Did you actually eat flowered crickets? Now I need to know this.
How has she gone all this time not knowing this?
Oh my god!
All right, so do you?
Like, I see the crickets and stuff at like the bulk food store where they have them in the candies and the little mealworms and stuff. It probably does taste like
chicken. You know that is not true. You know that is not true. There is not enough meat there for it to taste like chicken. I've had crickets. They are tiny. Even the big ones don't. I mean, whatever.
All right, so we have a few minutes. So next week's topic is Jack the Ripper. We're going to talk about Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper!
Oh, Becky, you're just joining us now, or have you been hiding in the comments? She was hiding, and she never said hi until now. Becky,
at the Mexican supermarket.
Gina's hiding too. I see you, Gina. I like Gina. She's a cool chick.
Oh my word!
Oh yeah, at that too, Mexican. They do sell those there. It's gross. I was like, no. Yeah, they're like, what is that? Tahini ones. I'd probably die before I eat insects. I don't know. I'm with you, Jill. I
would have to be destitute. Not gonna lie, like I would have to be destitute.
Yeah, it would. I told you, I'm a thick girl. I'm gonna last a little longer than the skinny ones. My body's gonna, not starve.
A lot of people like that's not the first time I've heard about the cricket thing.
And the hot dogs. Ew, I didn't even eat hot dogs. Those are gross too.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I needed to finish reading that before I made a comment. I thought they were just saying you could buy them there, but evidently they put it. I mean, I would imagine the hot dog rounds out the cricket taste, right?
Well, I will tell you, I saw how hot dogs were made in 8th grade. I took a home ec class in 8th grade, and the substitute teacher showed a video on how hot dogs were made. I have not eaten a hot dog ever since.
Oh, that's girl, I only eat all beef hot dogs. There's no way you're gonna find me eating.
No, I can't eat them, and that's why I could never watch any of those other how your food is made videos, because I would probably starve and never eat again. Nope, I don't want to know how my food is made. I mean.
So welcome to Twisted Tales from the Graveyard, where we've gone from Hansel and Gretel to hot dogs. We appreciate all of you being here. And we're looking forward to Hansel or Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper. And you can find us on YouTube as well. So please go find us Tales from the Graveyard, Digging Up History. So you just, put that in your YouTube search bar and it'll come up. Subscribe to our channel, because the more people we get, the more it's better. We're just awesome.
Or you can message us and we can send you a link if you're having a hard time.
Yes, yep, we'll send you that. So again, next week is March 9th at 7:00, and it's Jack the Ripper. That's going to be exciting. So
peace.
We'll see you guys all next week. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everyone that commented and viewed our channel. We appreciate you all. Bye.
Bye.